We commend ourselves as ministers of God in much patience, in tribulations, in needs, in distresses, in stripes and imprisonments, in tumults, in labors, in sleeplessness, in fasting, in purity, by knowledge, by long suffering, by kindness, by the Holy Spirit, by sincere love, by the word of truth, by the power of God, by the armor of righteousness on the right hand and on the left, by honor and dishonor, by evil reports and good reports, as deceivers yet true, as unknown yet well known, as dying, and behold we live, as chastened and yet not killed, as sorrowful yet always rejoicing, as poor yet making many rich, having nothing and yet possessing all things. What a great passage of Scripture. And of course, remember last week we were talking about all the things that Paul had faced, and then he came back and said how they endured those things. For example, you notice he mentions in verse 4, in patient or in tribulation, in needs, in distresses, in stripes, being whipped, imprisonment, in tumult, and labors, and sleeplessness. And then he starts in verse 6 saying, he says, by purity, by knowledge, by long suffering, by kindness, by the Holy Spirit, by sincere love. And then we're going to pick up in verse 7. What's going to help us through all these troublesome times that Paul talked about as being a minister, which he mentioned in verse 4. But in all things we commend ourselves as ministers of God. I'm telling you, folks. We live in a time now, and of course we can't even compare to what's happened in times past, other centuries. But there are things that we face in this life that may cause us to just throw in the towel or to slack off or give up or quit. And we ought to be ashamed of ourselves if we have that attitude. I'll do things when things are well. I'll do things when I have my health. I'll do things when I have my wealth. I'll do things when everybody likes me. I'll do things when I don't have any problems in my life. And if there's one thing that we've learned from our Acts study, Acts chapter 8 and verse 4, when those Christians were being persecuted, what did it say? Does anybody remember Acts 8 and 4? The church was being persecuted and they were scattered. It said they went everywhere preaching the word. I mean, here you are facing all this hardship in your life, and yet you're still mindful of doing the right thing. And then he talks about that here. And he talks about how we're able to accomplish all these things. By the knowledge we discussed, the long suffering. Look at verse 7. By the word of truth, by the power of God, by the armor of righteousness on the right hand and on the left. Paul's talking about here what helps me as a minister and others to stay on the straight and narrow is to use these tools. It's not rocket science, folks. If somebody's struggling with their faith, what are some key questions you'll ask them? Two that I can think of right off the bat. Right? How's your study habits? That's a good one. You feel distant from the Lord? Have you been reading His Word much? Have you been listening to Him? How's your prayer life? Good one. How's your prayer life? I like that. You just ask these questions. And so here Paul, he brings up those ideas and talking about what's going to help him. The word of truth is what's helped him. Dean, did you have a thought point? Okay. I read your book.
Also, all of us sometimes do that.
Mm-hmm.
And if we just kind of start thinking about what's good, conscious things and whatnot, and the Word of God and whatnot, then we can get back out.
Well, that's the thing. I think that the tunnel vision can get the best of us, where all we focus on. Do you know anybody like that? That all they can focus on and think about is the bad stuff. You ever notice any Americans where you would think there's nothing good? Is there anything good going on in America? Is there anything good going on in America? Is there? I mean, how did you get here today? You drove on a highway, right? That was kind of cool, right? You have some stoplights, there's orderliness there. That's kind of cool, right? Anybody break into your home? Well, we know that happens. But, the point is there good stuff? There's good stuff, but it's easy. It's dangerous, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying you don't. Yeah, bad days, yeah. Am I naive to think there isn't bad stuff going on in the world? Bad stuff? Sure there is. But if that's all I focus on, then it's going to suck the life out of me. I'm telling you here, what Paul's doing here, he's telling, here's what helped me to stay focused. So I kept on pressing on, as he would often talk about, finish what's before him. Not only the word of truth, but by the power of God, giving the glory to God, the armor of righteousness. I'm telling you, you want to stay focused, no matter what bad stuff, and you can read all the things that happened to Paul up here in verses 4 and 5. Did that have any bearing on his faithfulness, on his righteousness? Did that have any bearing? In other words, these bad things were happening, so did that mean he wasn't righteous? So when bad stuff happens to you, when you face hardships in life, does that necessarily mean you're being unrighteous? Could it? Well, sure. Sometimes, bad things can happen to bad people. You make wrong choices, you're going to suffer the consequences for it. But what Paul's talking about here, you know what? No matter what's happening to you in this life, you say, well, you know what? Bad things can happen to good people. You think of a passage that reminds us of that? Bad things happen to good people? You know where that's found, guys? A book? Don't say the Bible. Matthew 5, Sermon on the Mount, which is great because, you talk about fundamentals. You get a chance. Here's Jesus' first sermon. We talk about this sermon, this great sermon, all these people. And he, early on in his earthly ministry, he brings up the importance of understanding, bad things happen to good people. Oh, kids are studying it or just finished it up. We were doing that in the Wednesday class. But yeah, Job's a classic case of that. And of course, even in our context, all the things that happened to Paul, with that we're going to get into over in the 11th chapter and 12th chapter in just a few weeks, wasn't because he was being unrighteous. But it's the righteousness, the fact of telling yourself, I'm doing what is right, is what's going to help us stay the course. As soon as you lose sight of that, and we're going to quit, or throw in the towel. This stuff shouldn't happen to me. Or when bad stuff does happen to you, what do you say? What do people often say when something bad happens? Why me? Why not you? There is no question. All the things that Paul mentioned here, would he be going through any of those things if he wasn't righteous? A lot of those things were a direct result of him preaching the gospel. A lot of this stuff that we will face in this world. And I have to tell ourselves, am I really standing up for what's right? Have I ever suffered? I want to ask you, have you ever lost a friend? Have you ever been treated differently at work? People kind of look down on you? Your neighbors? Just any situation, can you think? Because of your stand for the truth, have you ever suffered any repercussions of that? And you sit back and go, nope, never have. What would that say? I'm not standing up for much of anything, am I? Warren?
What you're doing in your life is wrong. It makes your life miserable.
Oh, yeah. Look up from the other side. I like that.
That's the flop side of that. If you got to have one of the two, if you have to have one of the two, I'll take it.
Yeah. If I'm going to suffer all these ramifications because of my stand for the truth, are there ramifications when I'm just a lack of a better word? I was going to say jerk. If I'm just a really bad guy, will I suffer some repercussions of that? I'm just nasty. I tell lies. I'm just mean to you. I cheat you. I'm not dependable. I'm just a bad guy all the way around. Yeah, I'm going to suffer for that. I like what Warren said. Well, if you're going to suffer for one of those, I opt for being the good guy and suffering for it. If we do. Gene, you had a point.
Realize that you get older, you're made Christian. You don't realize you're doing things Christian all the time. You try to convince them to. But in my life, I feel like that instead of being a Christian and whatnot, with what's going on in the world, we're kind of isolated. She's my best friend. You know, I don't have companionship with good friends and come on talk, do things they do.
Right.
You can especially after she's what I've got, and it's important that she is.
Right.
And if I didn't have her, would I be maybe back over at the boat? Maybe sitting around, minding around this or that. Each one of us Christians.
Well, you're talking about now things that help you, okay? Things that help you, and that's the other part of the equation here. What's going to help us through those difficult times? And you think of your brothers and sisters in Christ. We rely on that. Well, we have prayer. There's tools that get us through that. It's easy just to say to yourself, I didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes that doesn't heal overnight. If I've been treated unjustly, I can see Paul's hurt when brethren turned against him. Even in the next chapter, guys, you're going to see Paul's hurt come out that you turned against me. And I was laboring with you, brethren. Don't get caught up with these false teachers. And boy, he lays it on the line. Mike. It's true. And then I think it's important that we understand in this context when he talked about the righteousness of God. I can't believe he said this in one verse. I wanted to get through this chapter today. Our righteousness helps us to stay focused. But we don't want to use this righteousness as a tool to build walls. Could you be in the right and have a holier than thou attitude? And going around and putting everybody down because you're not righteous like me. There's just a lot of stuff that you could do as far as pointing out error. Good grief, every night you and I could all go to bars around town and let them know what the Bible teaches about that. The point is, there's going to be enough trouble coming from you just standing up for what is right and the environments that you're in is the point I'm trying to get us to see. And I like what you're talking about there, Mike. And so let's move on. He's talking about by honor and dishonor. Honor and dishonor. Well, we have to look. He says by evil report and good report. He endured. But where does this evil report come in? How does the dishonor come in, guys? What's happening here? What's Paul bringing up? Okay, but how does that help you stay focused? All right. Anything else? Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true, and it should, and we should be thinking about that. And I like what Paul's doing here, guys. Is he doesn't put a clause in. I think so often we as Christians, I'll serve you if, I'll serve you when. You know, that's what they did that to Jesus. I'll come with you, but can I first go do this? Can I go do this first? We'll put clause on you, and I'll be there if something doesn't come up. I'm a pretty busy person, so if something comes up, I'm going to have to do that. And we put clauses on it. And I like what Paul does here. I stayed course. When I had the understanding of people knew that I did things out of honor, and then with the false accusations that are there, the good and the bad, I'm staying the course, and the good and bad are going to be there. I think there's times when we think that when everybody's against you, is everybody against you? When you're having a bad day, everybody's against me. Is everybody against you? Call me up and I'll tell you, well, I'm for you. Not everybody is against you is the point. And so when people are questioning your honor, it doesn't mean that everybody looks at it that way. And with the latter part of that, when he talks about by evil report and good reports. Paul had some good reports, didn't he? No, people recognized what he did, and there were evil reports. Were those true? Oh, that's why they're called evil. And yet he still, I accomplished what I did by those things, and by educating us to know bad stuff will happen. How does that help us as Christians? Knowing bad stuff will happen. How does that help us? How does that help you? If I tell you, okay, now look, bad stuff's going to happen. Okay? You know how to handle it? Anything else? You know it's coming. I mean, it's just like when you don't know when it's coming, right? It's kind of like, it's hard to get over that. It's like, I can't believe the guy said he was a Christian. My own brother stabbed me in the back. And you just can't get over that. Did that ever happen in the Bible? Judas? You? I mean, you talk about people turning on you. It's like, I look at people sometimes and I say, why are you so shocked? I've known to say this when people have told me things about what religious groups are doing today and things, and I'll go, nothing shocks me anymore. Sadly, sometimes I'm shocked. Wow, okay, that surprises me. But really, nothing shocks me anymore because evil's out there. Okay? Yeah. Don't leave us hanging, Gene. No.
But I keep under my body and I get these suggestions less. When I preach to others, I'm a substitute. That's the way. He has to be that careful. Man, I have to be.
That's true. It's true. I mean, and any of us that you have plans on doing things. Maybe you like to exercise. I like to run. If I run, I pull something. I say, well, that can happen. You realize that injuries can happen. That's part of it. You don't do it by saying, that's it. I'm never, ever, ever running again. No, that's part of it. And as a Christian, if you don't prepare yourself for the hardships that are going to come your way, you're not going to make it. If you don't accept it, that it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Why is it going to happen? Because people do things that are wrong. That's my simple answer of why did 9/11 take place. Bad people do bad things. But why? Bad people do bad things. It's as simple as that. And you can be involved in that. You could suffer personally. And let's not be so shocked about it. But it's going to help us. And he's using it in the sense of here that's helping him as deceivers, yet true. He was always up front. Falsely accused here. Remember, didn't take their money from the brethren at Corinth. They turned that against him. Can you imagine doing something good? You doing something kind to somebody and they twist it into something evil? Imagine that. Like, you just went out of your way to do something and somebody goes, okay, what do you want? Now, I know kids do that a lot. Hey, Mom, I'm going to wash the car. What do you want? We see that coming, right? But for you and I, we understand that we can be on the up and up. And people can twist that. And it's sad. Paul stayed the course. As unknown, yet known. Okay? I kind of like that. Have you ever, I can remember seeing a YouTube video, policeman pulls somebody over and the guy goes, "Do you know who I am?" Playing that card. Like, oh, like so you're somebody special, right? Are you only going to be faithful to the Lord and do those things that are necessary if people notice it? What if you do some stuff and people don't notice it? Never got that recognition in the pulpit. You know what? Boy, I'm going back a lot of years on this one. A preacher came to visit. And that preacher, we used to support him. I mean, I'm going way back in a long time. Not us, but where I was attending. We used to support this guy. But we come to find out that he was teaching some error. And we were going through some issues on that, trying to deal with it. But he had a long-standing relationship with the brethren there for years. He came into services one night on a Wednesday. I'll never forget. I get up and taught the Bible class I am right now. After services, he gets me in the corner. I've never been so disgraced in all my life that you didn't acknowledge me from the pulpit. Wow. You want people to notice you. Are you going to do stuff if people don't notice you? Paul, it isn't whether I'm known. You know who I am? He's not playing that card. You want to play a card with, if I'm writing this, if I'm Paul and I'm writing to brethren, do you know who I am? I'm the Apostle Paul. You've got some nerve of treating me like this. And who are those guys? They're nobody. He's not doing that. He's talking about himself, why I'm staying the course, known and unknown. Mike. Yeah. Yep. Yep. That's true. Going back to that Acts chapter 8 and verse 4, one of the things I like about that passage is, Lord willing, someday I'll be in heaven someday. Are you part of the, those that were scattered everywhere preaching the word? Yeah. Well, you weren't mentioned. You weren't mentioned by name. I didn't know who you were. That we could, congratulate you. People do stuff all the time. And there's a lot like that, Mike. There's a lot behind the scenes. Not all the apostles were like prominent, and their names mentioned a lot throughout the scriptures. You got Peter, you've got Paul, and John and others, but they didn't get the kind of recognition you would think, well, they deserve. What? Do we ever have that attitude of, I want the recognition I deserve? And that's what that gentleman was telling me. You should have mentioned me from the pulpit. And I hope that we don't have that attitude. Go to a gospel meeting. They didn't ask me to lead in prayer. Yeah. See if I come back. What? Is that what it's all about? And I love Paul's disposition here. As dying, and behold, we live. Has Paul ever been left for dead? Oh, yes. And I can just see him. I'm not saying he's smiling here, but it's kind of, it's dying, but I'm still alive. Yeah, I almost read in this, when anybody tells me a situation in their life, I hate to minimize it, but anytime anybody writes anything, I could say, well, could have been worse. Is that true? Anytime a situation comes, you could say could be worse. As dying, well, okay, Paul, that was pretty bad. Stoned to death, left for dead. But you didn't die. I imagine that sometimes he'd wish he had. But the point is, he suffered. And the positive side on that is I still stayed the course, even though this was going on, as chastened and yet not killed. Was he ever scourged? I mean, you talk about a guy being beaten, and yet here's a guy, but I wasn't killed. Maybe Paul and Silas were singing that. I don't know what they were singing when they were in prison, We didn't die, Lord, from getting whipped. I don't know what they're singing, but it was horrible. They could be thanking God that they're alive, even though they're in prison after being beaten. I have no idea what they were singing and what they were praying about. But again, all this helped Paul. Believe it or not, guys, this was helping him. And I think it's a lesson for all of us to say, what's going to strengthen me? This. What's going to help me stay the course? This. Learning from this. It's just as applicable today. That's what I love about studying this stuff. It hasn't changed. And then finally in this section, as sorrowful, yet always rejoicing. That sounds like a contradiction, guys. How can you be sorrowful and yet rejoice? Can you guys give me an example when you were sorrowful but yet you were rejoicing? Right? It's a perfect illustration, I think, because you're still going to shed tears. There's nothing wrong with shedding tears. You guys tell me one time we shouldn't cry when a Christian dies. Jesus, did he cry? He wept. Person died, right? And he even knew the person was going to come back to life. And yet he's still weeping. There's nothing wrong with weeping. And we can be crying, a loved ones, I've seen it happen, a preacher friend of mine, you go up to the family, the parents, you hug on them and you're just aching inside and you're hurting. And yet I can still remember telling them, he's the lucky one. Wish that were me. Yeah, absolutely. And so Paul, when he's sorrowing, or full of sorrow, there's still that joy inside of him. He's rejoicing. What can you possibly be rejoicing about? Now, we use that situation. I don't think Paul's specifically talking about that here. How is he rejoicing through his sorrow? There's things. Okay, so my life isn't all for naught. Okay, this is bad, but I can remember, while I was here, what I was able to accomplish. Okay, there's good things can come out of a bad situation. That's a classic one. That's right. He actually mentioned in other passages that to suffer for Christ is an honor. Okay, and again, that's all part of it, guys. That when we think of the rejoicing that is there, there's that inner smile, so to speak. I'm not saying Jesus was hanging on the cross, and we talked about that this morning. He's not. I think there's a classic case. If we wanted to pick an illustration, how about him hanging on the cross? I mean, here's a guy at one point says, "Father, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" The humanity part of him, he's hurting, and yet the other one says, "It's finished. I've done the work that you've wanted me to do." You got to feel good about that. And Gene, look what he does. That's the perfect parallel to the second half of this. He says, "Yet making many rich, as having nothing, yet possessing all things." What in the world? Well, that there. I mean, that's why I can get in the pulpit here this morning and say, you guys, you're a Christian. You're rich. I mean, you are rich. You're not a Christian. You are poor. Now, usually the non-Christian looks at you like, what? What do they think? Man, I got more than you have. I've got a summer home. I have 3 cars. I've got this kind of income. Yeah, they're thinking physically. Paul wasn't. Not what he's talking about. There's where you talk about joy of giving people that which is, you can't put a price on. That's what Jesus tried to explain. What's the profit of man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul. A person that finds himself, a person that is saved, man, you don't have to worry about what part of town you live on, what kind of clothes you're wearing. You're not even worried about that. Your goal is, you know what? I'm going to heaven. I'm clothed with righteousness. Remember that. We'd already studied that. You don't want to be found naked, so to speak, that you're not clothed spirit. Being a Christian. And Paul providing that for people. And that's why you and I can be thankful for our lives, because we've been going through this life trying to help people get to heaven. And if our goal, if we get sidetracked on that, well, I've helped a lot of people get jobs. I've helped a lot of people. I put a lot of food on people. Is there anything wrong with that? No. But there are people who think that, you know what? They'll put that on par. I've helped a lot of, I've worked in kitchens. I organized a pantry. We're feeding the homeless. We've provided shelter for them. We've gotten them jobs. We've got websites for all of this stuff. And look at all this. This person's working way up. Look at all this stuff I've done. What about their spirituality? I remember a guy working a Bible booth up in Canada. We did that a lot. But he was right beside, church had a booth right beside the Salvation Army. And the Salvation Army guy goes over to the member of the church that's working over there, and he goes, "You guys got the right idea. What are you talking about? We don't teach. We just provide food for people, shelter for people. You guys are teaching the truth." Well, he didn't say the truth like they didn't have it, but he says, "But you guys are giving them just the word." And that spoke volumes to me when he told about that, because they understood that there's a huge difference here. And I'm not saying that, we don't do things on our own, and a lot of us do. You help the needy. You provide funds for that and food, which is great. But the work of the church is to make known the manifold wisdom of God, is to help people get to heaven. That's the goal. And you want to know something? That's what Paul's life was all about. He never, ever lost sight of that. And I'm afraid it is so easy for us to get caught up in this world where we're walking by sight, and everything is about where I live, where I work, what I wear, what entertainment I do, my family, my kids. Everything is this world, and the spiritual part, got to have that. And we're missing how that we want people to go to heaven. I told you this before, and I'll say it one more, and then I'll give it over to Dan. I have been in meetings, and I've had people get up, and they're praying for the soldiers. Is it good to pray for the soldiers defending the country? Yeah. You want them to come back safely? Yeah. But guys, add something to that. That they'll come back and be appreciative and find the truth and become Christians. That's what you want? You want people to become Christians. I'm not praying for all the poor people in this world to get a job. I just want them to get a job. Help me get a job, Lord. I want them so they're not living on the street anymore. Just help them get a job, Lord. Help them find the truth so they can go to heaven. That's what we want. That's the focus that needs to be. Dan, what were you going to say, buddy?
Even if we're not trying to get people at the church, for our purposes, we can forget what those purposes are. At some point, we have to stop worrying about how well equipped the classrooms are and just use them.
Yeah, exactly. We want this to become a multi-million-dollar complex. For what? We want to come here. I really like the simplicity that we have. I've learned a lot from us working on this. Seriously, over the years and places I've been at, less is more. If you ever want to apply the principle on a spiritual level, that phrase, less is more, it's this. Because the more is the spiritual side. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have adequate meeting facilities. Not at all. Not adverse to that. Can you take it to the nth degree? Can you take it where you start losing your focus? Yes, that's what our lesson, that's why Dan brought that up. There are just things that can cause us to lose our focus. And this world is being a temptation for all of us to lose our focus on what is important. So, now, we finish up, and he starts out in verse 11 to the end of the chapter. O Corinthians. Let me stretch that for 2 minutes and our class is done. Okay. Oh, Corinthians. You know, Paul is talking about the affections that he has for them. Look at this. I know I usually get you guys to read, but we don't have that much time. He goes, O Corinthians, we have spoken openly to you. Our heart is wide open. You are not restricted by us, but you are restricted by your own affections. Oh, man, I really like that. Paul says, look, if we've got a problem between us, could you imagine going to a brother or sister here? Man, I love you, man. You go up to a brother and you go, yeah, Keith, I love you, man, and this is great. I just want you to know how much you care. Now, if we've got a problem, what's Paul saying? If there's a problem between us, it's you. Okay? That's what he said. He said, I want you to open up. He said, I want you to know we have been open to you. Nothing has restricted that. But if something has, and he's going to identify it, by the way, those nasty false teachers that have come in. And that's why he does in the last, if you want to understand the context of don't be unequally yoked with unbelievers, everybody goes that for marriage. Don't be unequally yoked in marriage. He's talking about, is that second time? Oh, I got, no. Yeah, I've got 6 minutes. Man, it's like opening your wallet. Where'd that $20 come from? Walk around with a smile on your face. Extra money, didn't know I had. Okay, so we got that extra time. So he's going to be telling these brethren that they're the ones who have caused this restriction of being open and loving towards us because it's not on our part. They have twisted it, by the way. These false teachers that have come in among you. And have you ever known that? Guys, have you ever known situations physically in this life with your relationship, whether you were personally involved, where you knew two people were friends, but there was this third party that has been the instigator and has put a wall between them? Have you ever witnessed that? I mean, it happens. I mean, there's two guys, or two ladies, or whatever, and this person comes in, and all they have to do is, if we've got Fred and Bill here, and here comes Harry. I've already forgot what I mean. Okay. I just know which one was Fred. Okay, Fred and Bill. So Harry comes over to Fred and says, you know what Bill told me, Bertie? What? He said that? Why, that low down. Hey, you know what he said? He called you a low down. Yeah, but what was the context? Why? He conveniently left that out. Why he said that. And now he's just putting this wedge between the two of them. What Paul is saying is that I know what Harry's been up to. And you know what? I don't care what he has said to me and whatnot. You know what? We love you. And we've been open to you. We care for you. We want what's best for you. That's why I labored for you. We didn't charge you any money while we labored. Other churches supported us. It was just a good thing. You guys, I'm giving you the taste of the rest of the book here. And this is what Paul's doing. And even in this chapter. So he's trying to tell the brethren and set them up here, O Corinthians, do not be joined together with these people. Do not hook up with them. They're evil. They're trying to put a wedge between us. That's what he says here. He says in verse 13, now in return for the same, I speak as to children, you also be open. Now, we have said that this congregation is going to make it. We're going to make it. We're going to make it to the end. We'll be faithful to our days. As time goes on, I tell the brethren here, as long as we stay on course, we stay with the word. But I'll tell you what the devil will do. We can preach the word here, but he can create division in here, schisms within the body. And all I say is follow Paul's advice here. please be open. If I offend you in some way, please be open. Come directly to me. Go directly to that sister. Go directly to that brother. Did I misunderstand you? Oh, yeah, you did. And once they clear that up, please don't walk away and go, can't believe they misunderstood. They went for clarification. They're trying to nip this. Don't make it worse than it already is. We got to ask ourselves, are we menders? Or are we the kind of people that tear things apart? Do we want harmony? Do we want to help each other get to heaven? That's why we bring up these things. That's why Paul's talking about it right here. I'm speaking to you with that affection and desire. I want you to be open. And you know what he comes right back with in verse 14? Do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship has righteousness with lawlessness? And what communion has light with darkness? The answer? No. Wait. I play hockey with a bunch of unbelievers. They like hockey, I like hockey. I thought this says, what do you have in common, Chuck? What's he talking about here? Unspiritual. There's nothing in common. Okay. No. You want to be in common is the point. That you want to be in common with people on a spiritual level. That's the goal. That's why you bring it up. Goal, huh? So what we'll do is we're going to pick up right there. I saw Mike heading over. Next week we'll finish up that chapter, but please read chapter 8 because, guys, or chapter 7, when you stay ahead, you can see where Paul's going with this. See his line of discussion. Thank you for your participation, guys. I appreciate it.